Exegesis of the Kabbalah within an occult or magical paradigm can be vastly different than the mystical or transcendent varieties of either Jewish or Christian forms. I'm Aiq Beker, and this is Arcanvm. While they are obviously related and share core philosophies and methodologies, as having sprung from the Jewish Qabalistic tradition, it has been adapted to a wider range of scriptural analysis, beyond any religious, legalistic adherence to one particular set of scripture. In the Hermetic or magical paradigm, it is applied as liberally to Judeo-Christian scripture as it is to pre-Christian pagan texts. Aleister Crowley once remarked accurately on its particular usage, namely concerning the glyph of the Tree of Life, remarking that it was akin to a massive filing cabinet for everything in existence, based on quality and correspondence. We will examine this later. Dion Fortune, the pen name of Violet Mary Firth, published a seminal work, The Mystical Qabalah. It is both an arc of transmission and monument to the practical application of Kabbalistic ideas, systems, and interpretations to both spiritual and material worlds, of such all-encompassing effect that it is absolutely required reading for esotericists of every stripe. Modern applications of the Kabbalah include visualized energy work and astral work. The first of these is in exercises such as the middle pillar, a visualization technique whereby one draws down the divine light of the One in Ein Sof to their personal sphere of sensation or microcosm, essentially the physical body and aura, by visualizing the Sephirot of the middle pillar of the Tree of Life along their anatomical center line. The astral application of this is pathworking, which is an elementary or rudimentary exercise prerequisite to scrying. Essentially, the initiate uses the Tree of Life and associated Kabbalistic and other symbols as an imposed groundwork for either traveling or scrying in the astral. Since the Tree of Life contains within itself every conceivable thing and permutation of things in creation, not merely in the world of Asya, but in all four worlds. More on this shortly. These are just a fraction of the techniques developed and in use by modern Kabbalists of the Hermetic or magical ilk. Here we come to our discussion of the Elements of Qabalah. The Magical Qabalah is primarily composed of two symbol sets. The first of these is the Hebrew alphabet, composed of 22 letters and having various correspondences or meanings attributed to them. Hebrew letters, like early Greek letters, as well as other alphabets of a Proto-Semitic origin, contain a numerical attribution as well as a phonetic. The letters and their corresponding numerical values and meanings are This is where the Sefer Yetzirah comes into play. It is in this central work of Kabbalistic cosmogenesis that the significance of the Hebrew letters as agents of creation is expounded. We read in the opening passage, "In 32 most occult and wonderful paths of wisdom did Yah, the Lord of hosts, engrave his name. He created this universe by the 3 Sepharim, writing, number, and speech. 10 are the numbers, as are the Sephirot, and 22 the letters. These are the foundation of all things." Again, we'll observe in Genesis that the creative deity spoke creation into existence. Even according to the Sanskrit Vedas, the Godhead ushers all creation into beginning by the initial utterance of the creative word Om. While some may interpret this as an archaic description of the formation of the universe out of vibration, it is also important that we understand the concept of words expressing and conveying thought, immaterial thought. In other words, the archetypal ideas of the divine mind are rendered manifest in creation by the intermediary of an intelligible mode of vibration, perhaps analogous to human speech. Taking this idea one step further, we might say that an abstract idea is formed in the immaterial mental plane, analogous perhaps to the world of forms by Plato. Speech then renders it sensible to the material, yet it is still rarefied. It serves only to communicate the idea. Finally, short of the actual physical construction of any given thing, acting itself out on the material plane, such as, say, the construction of a house, the grounding of this idea as a vehicle for its respective concept in the material plane is its representation in physical letters. As opposed to the Zohar, the Sefer Yetzirah is a short read, and I've included a link to it in the show notes below this video. Antoine Court de Gebalan, a French author and former pastor, in an essay within his larger work, Le Monde Primitif, or the Primitive World, first correlated the 22 tarot trumps, or major arcana, to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The second symbol system is the glyph of the Etz Chayim, or the Tree of Life. It seems at first as nothing more than a series of lines and circles, yet its simplicity belies its profound depth. Let's examine it further. 10 spheres, or sephirot, the emanations, perhaps like to the subconscious materials of the mind of deity, the dream stuff of God. They burgeon forth, each successively emanating as a product of the preceding. Almost simultaneously, recall to mind the image of the Tzimtzum and the shattering of the vessels given early in the Lurianic exposition of cosmogenesis. The beam of light pouring, bearing downward through the chain of creation, overflowing successively, filling each vessel, the bowls of the Sephirot, until they could hold no more. This is the divine Shefa, the inpouring of the light of the One. Each Sephirah bears a close relation to the one immediately preceding and succeeding it. It might be compared to an oscillation between 3 states, a pattern first molded and set by the first or spiritual celestial triangle at the top of the tree. Kether, crown, unity. Chokmah, wisdom, duality. Bina, understanding, triangularity. The first stable shape. Positive, negative, neutral. Neutral meaning more so androgynous, or containing both in such equal proportion as to render either unable to express. This has a correlation in Taoist philosophy to the Wu Wei, Yang, and Yin. The second 2 Sephirot are utterly united and therefore latent in the first, Kether, unity. But upon individualizing, they become polar expressions of the one thing. This pattern of triangularity continues down to the ethical or moral triangle in Chesed, mercy, and Gebura, severity. The two unite in Tifereth, beauty. This continues further to the intellectual or mundane triangle of Netzach, victory, Hod, glory, and Yesod, foundation. Malkuth, pendant at the lowermost nadir of the tree, is the receptacle of all the emanations which are above it. There they become condensed to physical, material form. The tree itself is a uniformly triadic glyph consisting of 3 triangles and 3 pillars. At the point between the celestial triangle and moral triangles, there is an unofficial sephirah called Da'at, knowledge. It is at this point that the lower triangles invert, their apexes downward. It is a reflective point, hearkening back to the duality of inner and outer realities we encountered in the Zohar, as well as the idea of a fallen or inverted creation. This point has no proper sephirah assigned to it. As it is averred in the Sefer Yetzirah, the sephiroth are 10 in number, not 9, not 11, but 10. The sephiroth can be viewed as a lineal or unfolded expression of the Pythagorean tetractys, as well as the concentric model of the spheres of the cosmos, which we have covered in previous episodes. In fact, each sephirah is given its own mundane classical planetary or celestial correspondence, and in some renderings of the Lurianic model, the sephiroth are alternately given the appearance of a series of concentric or nested bowls. Connecting the sephiroth are the navitot, or paths of the tree. These equal 22 in number. Sound familiar? They connect the sephiroth and are expressions of the permutation or transformation of their respective energies, one into another. The paths which horizontally connect sephiroth of an opposing or polar nature are called the reciprocal paths. While the sephiroth are conceptualized as representing certain passive forces which underlie creation, the navitot are more the place where stuff happens. They're active and experiential in nature. They're meeting points where energies collide and balance. It is of the utmost importance to note that nothing on the upright tree is evil of its own accord. Everything is naturally occurring, a necessary component contributing to the dynamic equilibrium which sustains material reality, whether that's nice or not. However, there is an Averse Tree, whose branches tend downward, embodying the qliphothic energies, the shells or shards of the previous failed creation. It is believed that our physical world rests upon the qliphoth, or the Averse Tree. These are the polar opposites, distortions, of the upright sephiroth on the tree. On the question of good and evil, Lurianic Qabalah gives us a clue. The tikkun must be accomplished, and this through good works. The sparks of the divine must be rescued or released from the shards of the qliphoth. Therefore, even that which is inverted and distorted must be sublimated. Above the tree are the 3 veils of negative existence. In succession they are Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. Ein is the highest of the veils and literally means nothing or not. Ein Sof is the middle veil and translates to no limit or limitless. Ein Sof Or is the third and lowermost veil and translates to limitless eternal light. This again is essentially cognate with the apophatic tradition of approaching the divine by negations. Truly, the absolute cannot be spoken of except to say what it is not. As yet a further parallel, while Keter, Chokmah, and Binah, the supernal triad, are manifest, the 3 negative veils are an unmanifest triad. Yet another triangular reflection, this time away from material manifestation rather than down towards it. At this rarefied level, the symbolism of the tree becomes very abstract and somewhat paradoxical, yet it remains consistent with its inherent logic and symbolism. Central to the description of creation from the Ein Sof, particularly in relation to the descriptions given in both the Zohar and the Sefer Yetzirah, are the aspects or emanations of the divine as its particular creative agents. In this we glimpse the individualizing of particular qualities which find their latent source in the void plenum of unmanifest simultaneity, the empty fullness of the one's unfathomable infinitude. A decent analogy is to say, impose the tree of life on the physical body. Kether would be at the crown of my head, perhaps representing the mind, the sovereign regent over the rest of my body. If the mind wants a glass of water, it doesn't jump out of my head to get it, it uses my hand. These ideas, the Sephirot and the Hebrew letters, are symbols for everything in creation as having come forth from the unmanifested potentiality of what is endless and therefore beginningless. If the divine is an unmanifested infinitude, then everything that can, has, and does come into being must reside within it in latent potentiality. Yet the one itself remains inexpressible, ineffable, unthinkable, and unmanifest. It contains everything because it is no thing. Next, we revisit the concept of the Olamot, the four worlds. The tree is further divided in this way into segments corresponding to each world. They also correspond to the four terrestrial elements: Atzilut and Yod to fire, Bria and He to water, Yetzirah and Vow to air, and Asya and He final to earth. Further, each Sephirah contains within it a separate tree. From all this, we arrive at a multi-dimensional map of creation. Not in a science fiction sort of sense, but one that allows us to understand a concept of worlds within worlds, or rather, further permutations of essences and the divine forces which underlie the substratum of creation. In the Hermetic or Magical Qabalah, these subdivisions allow the magician to dial in as minutely as possible the aspect or force which they wish to access. Again, hyperspecificity being the name of the game in the active path of magic. There are a few more aspects of the Qabalah which should be covered in order to make our introduction to the topic well-rounded. These are the Hekaloth and the Partzufim. Essentially, these are the grouping of the Sephirot into segments of the tree which correlate to the macrocosmic and microcosmic arrangement of the architecture of creation. The Hekaloth correspond to the palaces, or in Neoplatonic and early Christian verbiage, the heavens. These are 6 divisions or groupings of the Sephirot based on the arrangement of the heavens culled from the Judaic literary tradition of Merkava mystics such as Rabbi Akiva. The Partzufim are arrangements of the Sephirot which correspond to the parts of the soul, an individual's spiritual architecture, and divisions of deity. The Partzufim are derived from the Zohar itself and heavily influenced by the Lurianic evolution of Kabbalah. The Partzufim are essentially partitioned on the schema of the four worlds as they exist in balanced and stable disposition within an individual soul and within the larger cosmic soul, the microcosm and macrocosm, as a primordial pattern of the organization of creative deity. These parts or segments of the soul, or essences of the one, interact with one another in intimate and integral ways. The Partzufim, as a model of the parts of the soul, is an incredibly efficient way of organizing the spiritual hierarchy or architecture within one's own being. However, we'll revisit it in more detail in further explorations of the Kabbalah and spiritual science in other episodes. Within the exegetical tradition of all 3 lineages of the Kabbalah are techniques of parsing and analyzing scriptural passages. The first is Gematria, known in ancient Greece as isopsephy. Gematria actually has a Greek etymology, Gematria, geometry in Greek. Gematria is a method of converting words to their numerical equivalents to yield numbers. We do this easily with the alphabetic numerical system of the Hebrew alphabet, early Hebrew having no other numeral system of its own. A subdivision of Gematria, alternately termed theosophic reduction, is Aiq Beker. In this method, we reduce the number we have yielded to a single digit by addition. In other words, if we have a word that converts to, say, 1,234, we add these. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. This is also called the Qabalah of 9 chambers, because 9 is the highest single-digit numeral. Each of the numbers 1 through 9 has particular meaning and significance relating to its Kabbalistic essence. Finally, there is Notariqon, which is a method of reducing sentences into words or names by using the first letter of each word in the sentence and transposing this to be a letter in a new word or name, similar to an acronym. This can also be applied in reverse to derive meanings in sentences or names from one given word. In divination, the cards of the tarot, the symbols of the planets and the zodiac, and the elements all have a corresponding sephirah and or navita on the tree of life. Again, think of it as a filing cabinet for every force, power, experience, etc. possible. We use these symbols as a symbolic language to synthesize and communicate ideas and experiences which are mapped onto the glyph of the Etz Chayim and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are then broken down into the mechanics of the 4 worlds, Partzufim and or Hekaloth for particular divinatory layouts, which add a layer of interpretive significance based on our own assimilation of these symbols, patterns, and concepts. How to study the Kabbalah? Well, I recommend one begins with a very basic primer on the subject. If your interests are in Kabbalah with a capital K, a modern text such as The Essential Qabalah by Daniel Matt is a great place to start. For more in-depth reading, I highly recommend Gershom Scholem or Rabbi Gershon Winkler. For capital Q Kabbalah, I absolutely recommend The Mystical Qabalah by Dion Fortune. The Kabbalah is something you will of necessity return to again and again, gaining more insight over the years. You should write and draw carefully and deliberately the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and construct the tree of life with due and harmonious proportion. I will be doing an instructional video on these in the near future. The Kabbalistic information contained within the Outer Order Knowledge Lectures in Regardie's 6th edition of The Golden Dawn are another great place to begin focusing your attention if you're not able or unwilling at this point to join a magical order. I would recommend memorizing the Hebrew names of the Sephiroth and the divine names given therein. Don't spread yourself too thin trying to unravel the secrets of the universe your first week. The symbolic images and systems are meant to be a scaffolding, a support to your spiritual endeavors and inquiry. Learn the language of the Kabbalah first, perhaps figuratively and perhaps eventually literally, and then begin your exegesis and practical experiments. Get involved with a community discourse comprised of relatively experienced practitioners. Not all spiritual inquiry is safely attempted alone. With no support structure to ask questions of and bounce ideas off of, this is one of the primary reasons why spiritual and magical orders exist. Finally, a brain-bending note to cap off the fairly epic review we've done of the tip of the Qabalistic iceberg. What the system of the Kabbalah ultimately boils down to is the way in which number, abstract number, numeral as divine mechanism or permutation, creates objective reality as well as conditions our subjective experience of it. We are bound by laws that are mathematical. We did not invent mathematics. Only the mundane symbols which we use to communicate those patterns which we recognized, but which pre-existed our observations of it. Duh. What is symmetry? What is harmony? What is proportion? All things can be measured and quantified in the material. From space with a tape measure to time with music. Yet this fact is a product of something else, something non-physical in essence. These metaphysical principles have effects which ripple forth. Our surest proof of that which transcends the material is the mathematical. It exists on a plane above the material and informs it in a way from above downward. This is why math can be done purely theoretically and applied to physical reality accurately. It is a universal certainty. For example, anywhere I go in the universe, to the moon, Jupiter, down the block, 2 plus 3 will always equal 5. Why is this? The symbols we use to represent numerals, such as say the number 5, are communicating so much more than we typically care to observe or understand. For instance, if I were to ask you to go out and get me 5, your next obvious question would be, 5 of what? But 5 exists, independent of whatever it is you bring me, and can be applied to anything. Numeral, therefore, is not merely quantitative, it is qualitative in a way, which is why it can apply to anything. 5 is not merely a symbol or an object shaped like the number 5. It expresses the quality of fiveness, that being more than 4, but less than 6. These abstract universal essences reveal so much more than just quantity when consciousness is added to the equation, the experience of numeral. These generate the laws of our experience. This is the essence underlying Pythagorean mathematics, the Kabbalah, and the universe. Creation is number. Are you a Kabbalist, or Kabbalist? What other applications of the Magical Qabalah do you find interesting or relevant? Are you even still here? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel, and remember to turn on all notifications. Please consider contributing to the Arcanvm Patreon for exclusive bonus videos, interviews, and tutorials, and to help me continue to produce more free content like this. Join me again in the next video, where we'll be diving deeper into the historical, theoretical, and practical sides of this and many other related topics. Thanks for watching. In Luke's